For the Investing News Network, I am Brian McGovern. Joining me today is John Patrick Lee, an ETF product manager at VanEck, to talk about investments in the gaming sector. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, yes. Very happy to be here.
Why don't we start with the VanEck Gaming Fund? Just give me the rundown. What's the story been like this year? What's the market been like for the fund?
Sure. So the VanEck Vectors Video Gaming and Esports ETF, ticker ESPO, is providing exposure to the video gaming segment as defined by the index provider. So a couple of things to kind of take away is that this is a passive ETF. We are not making active management decisions. So the index provider cuts the index and we're trying to track it. And what's been going on lately? I mean, last year was crazy. 2020, COVID definitely played a big part in the performance of the fund. Video games as a whole were considered part of the work from home trade. People did not have the flexibility to go out and go to the movies. And as a result, they turned to new forms of entertainment. So 2020 was a banner year in a lot of ways. But I would really just kind of emphasize that we view that as an acceleration of trends that are already in place, right? It's not like, 2020 video games just came out of nowhere. No, if you go back to 2019, the S&P was up about 30% and the ETF was up around 40%, right? So we had a great year in 2019, and then in 2020, COVID happened, and everybody just kind of realized what an opportunity this was. So that has been the real narrative over the last year and a half. This year, we've seen not the same performance that we had last year. And, I see that kind of reflective of kind of the discourse that's happening around growth versus value, right? Video game stocks are growth stocks, and they are, and some people believe that the growth trade is over and value is going to come back and they're going to have period of outperformance. Remains to be seen. I'm still positive on the sector, given the fact that there are these big picture trends that are happening around the world, which are broadly supportive of the video gaming industry.
Could you expand on those trends? Maybe some of the events that you're expecting to see throughout the year that could continue to keep the gaming investment sector on that hot trend from last year?
Yeah. So a couple of things to unpack there in that question. First of all, what are these other trends that I'm talking about? So we call video games a long-term structural growth story. And what that means is video games are growing, users are growing, but it's not happening in a bubble, right? There's other things affecting entertainment, media, and technology as a whole that are video games are kind of sitting right in the middle. So first, you can think about changing consumer demand. Consumers are demanding a more interactive form of entertainment. And you see that also reflected in something like social media, where people are online posting pictures, posting blogs or tweets or whatever it is, and other people are interacting with it, giving them likes, commenting, right? There's an organic ecosystem that's existing online and people want to be there, right? In a lot of ways, video games are moving towards becoming their own type of social media platform because people are using the game ecosystem to really hang out with their friends. So, it's in a lot of, newspaper articles, you'll see dads or parents complain, well, back in my day, we used to go play football, or why don't you go play football or kick the can? Now all they do is play Fortnite with their friends. And it's like, that is what I'm talking about, right? People are, as a collective group, and with this new technology, people are using technologies to entertain themselves and each other in new ways. And video games is one example of that. So that's a big trend, number one. And the second big trend is demographics. And there's different ways to think about demographics, but let's focus on two of them. So for the first one is, there's a misconception, I think, in the market where people think people who play video games are 12 years old, they don't have any money, and they're spending their parents' money on their credit card, right? That's simply not true. In the US, your average gamer, depending on what, who's running the statistic, is between 28 and 32 years old, right? So we're talking about 30-year-old adults playing video game well into adulthood, well out of, college years. And these are people who have money, have jobs, and they're using their money to spend on entertainment in new ways that previous generations didn't. So that's kind of the first wrinkle of demographics. And the second wrinkle really comes down to the emerging markets consumer. So when you think about what's driving video gaming growth, Mobile gaming is very key. And the mobile adoption runway is longer in the emerging market space than it is in the domestic market space. So if you think about it, not everybody in the emerging markets has a cell phone yet, right? So there's more people that still don't have their first cell phone. And what do you do when you get your first mobile smartphone? Is you download Angry Birds or you download Fruit Ninja or whatever, and you start playing your first game on your mobile phone, right? So there's a long runway of adoption that we see in the emerging market space. So that's two kind of ways demographics are out there. And there are other, so that's kind of the supportive environment. But if you want to talk about what's driving growth in the video game market and what's kind of happening, what are the trends? Really, the main trend is mobile. Okay, so mobile is huge. Mobile didn't exist before 2008. Mobile came along once the iPhone came along. The first commercially viable mobile game was Angry Birds. So in just 13 years or so, mobile has gone from zero to now it's the biggest revenue segment if you compare it to the PC revenue segment and the console revenue segment. So it's already the biggest segment, and it's also growing faster. So mobile is key, and a lot of things are happening as people are trying to get involved in the mobile space. So M&A activity is hot right now. The large publishers are buying up mid-tier mobile developers because they see mobile as this big opportunity zone. And exactly to your original question, they're trying to continue that growth, right? So a company that's been growing well over the last few years, okay, mobile's hot. Well, they have two choices. They can launch their own mobile game and try to make it work, or they could just go out and buy someone that's already doing very well in the mobile section. So that's what's happening right now. EA in the last couple of weeks, they announced they were going to buy a company called Glue Mobile, which is a mobile developer and publisher. And EA said they're immediately doubling the size of their mobile business with that acquisition. And there are many more examples of M&A activity that is focused on mobile gaming. One of the other things that's happening is that publishers are using new revenue models to drive growth. So the new revenue model I'm talking about is the free-to-play or game as a service model, where essentially instead of buying a game, so go back to 1993, you drive down to Toys R Us, you buy your Mario Kart, you come back home, you plug it in, it's a one-time transaction. With the technology that's available, the way that people are connected to the computers, the publishers have a direct line into your living room, and it's one click to buy, right? So a lot of these really popular games now are coming out free, and then the publishers are making money over and over and over as people spend money on the same game. Fortnite is a great example of that. Fortnite made like $2.4 billion in 2018. It's a free game, right? So it's this idea that you can launch this amazing free game, get people in your system, and then they're spending money. So that's another thing that's kind of happening right now. One of the key trends in the market.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can expand on how you see the relationship between the console gaming sector and the mobile gaming sector moving forward. Mobile, obviously, just a lot more cell phones out there than consoles. But as we are at the dawn of a new generation of consoles from players in the sector of Microsoft and Sony, do you see those two becoming closer together in the way that they connect and the games that they do, or how do you see those two markets sort of in relation to one another?
I think I think they need to be looked at separately, and I'll use Call of Duty as an example. So Call of Duty is a 20-year-old game. It's been played for by a million or 17-year-old, 18-year-old game, a series, and it's been played by people. People love Call of Duty. It's a great thing. They've got so many people spending money on Call of Duty. Yes, yes, yes. And then they never had a mobile version until the end of 2019. I'll say October 19. They launched Call of Duty Mobile, right? And immediately that opens the doors to a completely new set of users. Maybe some of them play console, maybe they don't, right? So it's just a new market. So I consider those markets separate. Sure, you're a guy who's playing mobile games might have a console or vice versa, but they're definitely two separate markets. And there's differences between how the games are developed, how expensive it is to develop the game. Just like you mentioned, the distribution of the game. So if you're a publisher and you want to get a game out to console players, the only people you're going to be, or PC, you're only going to be able to sell to somebody who's went ahead and bought a console for $300 to $500, right? But the mobile, just like you said, everybody's got a phone. That doesn't mean everybody in the world is a potential $100 a year mobile revenue source. But it's just, the idea of TAM, total accessible market, TAM really starts coming into play with mobile because it's such a bigger space. You mentioned about this console cycle, the new consoles came out at the end of the year and demand is very, very strong. So, with combination of the COVID, supply chains, the semiconductor shortage, and just, the fact that PlayStation and Microsoft can't even keep up with the demand that's out there in the market. I think I just saw something on Twitter the other day. It's like, I finally got my PlayStation or my Xbox. Like, they've been trying to get it for like 4 or 5 months and they haven't been able to, right? So this year, I think Sony actually mentioned this in one of their earnings reports. They're like, they're expecting demand to outstrip supply into next year, right? So, it's March, then it's going to be summertime. There's still demand or supply issues. And then we're right back into the Christmas season. And this is, Christmas season 1 year later. So consoles are very high demand. And, but I think in some ways, those companies are looking out even further past this console cycle because, cloud gaming is supposedly coming. Some people are bullish on cloud gaming. Some people aren't, but the name of the game here is how many people can you get onto your platform playing your game, whether you're Sony, whether you're Microsoft, whether you're Google Stadia, whether you're, Amazon Luna or NVIDIA GeForce, whatever, they have there's all these different cloud offerings. And I think that is kind of where the attention and real focus is shifting from the cloud providers to the potential cloud providers. So Microsoft, they bought ZeniMax Studio, going back to M&A. They bought ZeniMax Studio. ZeniMax, they own IP like Skyrim, Fallout, all these awesome games. So they have tons of followers. And the thinking is 5 years down the road, when Microsoft releases, when Bethesda releases the next Fallout, is it going to be an Xbox exclusive, right? And the head of Xbox too, he's kind of mentioned like, he said to the media or to the analysts, he's like, you guys are too focused on how many consoles we're selling. That's not what we're focused on. We're focused on how many Game Pass subscribers we have, right? Because your Game Pass already has a cloud or offering. They're trying to get you into the same thing as the games are doing. Is they don't want that one $500 spend. They want you spending $20 a month or $30 a month, and they want to get as many people doing that as possible. And that kind of consistent revenue, very important for these companies. So I think that's kind of where we're going. And depending on who you talk to, people will say cloud gaming is dead. Other people will say cloud gaming is alive and well. And I just think that it's just getting figured out right now in real time.
I see. As you mentioned, very big year for gaming investments last year. I'm sure that drew a lot of new eyes into the sector, a lot of new people wanting to start to investigate what's there to be, what's really there. I'm wondering if, can you tell me a bit about some of the maybe questions that you've received recently from people looking to start into the sector and things that maybe you would say, if you're looking to jump into gaming investments, like you should look at these things or you should ask these questions?
So the one question I'm getting the most right now is what happens when things go back to normal, right? So we had a great year last year. Everybody was playing video games, revenues, engagement, users across a number of different metrics are through the roof, all-time highs, you could say. And there's going to come a point when some of the people that are, let's say, new video gamers as of 2020, they're like, oh, now I can go back to the bar now, or I can go back to the restaurant. I'm not going to play games anymore. So that, I think, is kind of at the top of a lot of investors' mind, especially after, an 80-something% up year. And the way I frame the response is, look, these are growth stocks. So yes, any downward revision of future growth is going to come with a pullback to the stock price, right? And how do you keep those kind of growth numbers going? So there is this concern that, COVID goes away, video game stocks are going to go down. I think that's a valid concern, but I think from my perspective, I keep my eyes on the long term. In 5 years, are more people going to be playing video games or less, right? And I really do believe that it's more. Especially when you factor in the stuff like I was talking about, the emerging markets consumers, who are the most populous, the most young countries in the world? It's emerging markets countries. It's China, it's India, Brazil, Indonesia, et cetera, right? The United States is in the top 5 by population, but those other 4 countries are emerging markets countries. And emerging markets countries, as a general rule, maybe ex-China, really skew young, right? So this is a young, populous potential user base that's going to be getting access to mobile games the first time. So that's why I'm bullish on the long term. Definitely short term, there's some risk that the reopening trade happens and video games have a little bit of a valuation reset, as Kathy Wood says. Besides that, I mean, I get a lot of questions about what about esports? What about esports? And you haven't asked about esports. And the esports question is interesting because esports was very, very front page news 2 to 3 years ago, right? You remember Fortnite World Cup in New York City, Overwatch League in New York City, sold out crowds, $400 a ticket. That kind of thing is really eye opening for people because it's a new paradigm. And I think a lot of people maybe were a little premature and saying, oh, okay, this is going to be bigger than the NFL and, but you need to keep things in perspective. So that's what I do. I say, keep things in perspective. Video game market is, according to Newzoo, $175 billion a year market, right? That's pretty big. Esports revenues, we're talking about a 1 billion or so in revenues, which is a lot smaller, 175 to 1, right? So then you think about, okay, well, what is the structure of the revenues in the ecosystem of esports? And it really is very heavily tilted towards the publisher. The publisher owns the game. Now the publishers are launching their own leagues like the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League and the Fortnite World Cup and all these other leagues and cups that are actually put on by the publisher. So they're, if you think about who makes money when the league sells the rights to YouTube, right, to stream the matches? It goes to the publisher. So if you add up all the revenues that make up that $1 billion in esports revenues, publishers are sitting very tight. So for people who are looking to get involved in esports investing, and I would recommend just sticking with the publishers. And maybe there are some really dynamic mid and small cap companies that are out there, but our ETF is providing definitely a large cap tilt. So esports, I get asked a lot. People like talking about mobile just because everybody's got a mobile phone, a mobile game on their phone, and it's kind of eye opening. It's like, yeah, I've spent $5 in Candy Crush in the last couple of years or whatever, and it's like, yeah, so have a lot of other people, and that's kind of like an eye opening thing. And then I think the thing that people really like to hear about, think about, is that we're not talking about little kids. Like this is an adult thing. And so I'm 37. People my age grew up playing 8-bit Nintendo, and then we graduated to Genesis, then we went to N64. So I have like a 22 year, or not 20, excuse me, 30. So I'm 37. So I've been playing video games since I was like 5. So we're talking about 30 plus year, maybe not entirely. I haven't been a hardcore gamer my whole life, but it's been a part of my life, right? So people my age who have kids, they're bringing their kids up. They're growing older. They're buying them Switches. They're growing up on iPads. So that's another kind of thing about the demographics is a 5-year-old today is playing games right now. And he's going to be playing games when he's 10. He's going to be playing games when he's 15. And he's probably going to be playing games when he's 30. And then his kids are going to be playing games, right? It's just a part of our life. And when you think about it with that 20, 30-year time horizon and that kind of demographic shift towards digital natives, it's very exciting.
Absolutely. That evolution is remarkable to see, and we'll have to keep talking to see how that evolves and into the year. John, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it and all your expertise.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for even more expert interviews. For the Investing News Network, I am Brian McGovern, and we'll see you next time.